the prophecy of the Cumae Sibyl on the dollar bill, Anno et coeptus, Novus Ordo Seclorum, these are derived from her ancient prophecy. But what was it she said? Not only would a global New Age come, a new world order, over which Apollo, who's identified in Revelation 17:8 and other places as the spirit that's going to inhabit the Antichrist, not only would he arrive, but it says he will come down as a new form of humanity. 'Tis thine own Apollo reigns, when the golden age rolls over again and gods and men are unified once again. It sounds very much like the mighty men of old.
The golden age of America begins right now.
Could it be that the powers and principalities who pull the strings tied to world leaders and orchestrate events on the geopolitical stage are currently in the process of opening a gate to the supernatural? It's the age-old story of the fallen watcher angels who descended to earth from the heavenly realms and reproduced with human women, like we see in Genesis 6 in the Book of Enoch. But now it seems as if we're witnessing in real time a second incursion of the same sins that led to the worldwide flood in the days of Noah. It's quite possible that there are a couple of culprits that are at play in the opening of portals that serve not only as direct lines of communication to the unseen realm, but also as gateways for interdimensional beings to enter and exit out of our physical reality at will. We've discussed how esteemed scientists who have previously worked at CERN, like Dr. Astrid Stuckelberger, have made claims that the experiments taking place at the mysterious LHC in Geneva, Switzerland, open portals through which entities can enter our world. We've also discussed how AI can serve as a conduit used by the spirits of fallen angels to communicate and interact with mankind. Both of these systems are being used in tandem to further the worldwide agenda of Satan to both corrupt mankind and deceive the nations, as stated in Revelation 27 and 8. Satan shall be loosed out of his prison, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. And what's interesting about all this is that it isn't the first time that the opening of a portal between our physical reality and the supernatural realm has taken place. In fact, it's a likely explanation for the methods used by the fallen angels in the days of Noah to reach mankind. And there are other instances throughout history and different cultures that attest to the interbreeding between divine beings and mankind written of in Genesis 6. Here's Dr. Tom Horn explaining when the image of portals to the supernatural realm appears in Scripture, and describing an interview he conducted with a medicine man from the Native American Navajo tribe about an ancient run-in with what were likely fallen angels.
Does the Bible talk about portals?
And that was the thing that was really important to us. So the Apache believe that this mountain is a doorway, a gateway. The New Agers have a lot of those kind of beliefs. But what we needed to know was, is there any biblical precedent for this idea that there could be strategic locations on Earth where there are gateways, where there are doorways? And the funny thing, Sid, is once we actually started going down that road, we were amazed at how much of this is in the Bible. You go into the Old Testament, it's through the Old Testament. Genesis 28, Jacob has a revelation. He sees a ladder. But what a lot of people miss in that scripture is he says there is a gate here. Most people say that he said this is the house of God. That's not what he says. Read it. He says there is a gateway here that opens to the house of God. So a doorway, a portal. Then you come into the New Testament. Does that theme continue? Here's Jesus saying, from henceforth you will see the windows of heaven opened and angels ascending and descending upon the Son of Man.
But it's not just angels, other entities ascend and descend. Now, you spoke with a Navajo historian of the oral history of Native Americans. Tell me what revelation you got.
Yeah, this was a very important thing. White dudes like me never get a chance to sit down with a member of the Navajo Nation, especially not an academic and a guy who's written books that are used in their system, in their institutions. But we worked it out. Long story short, I wound up going to the four corners of the United States of America. We sat down in a traditional hogan. He's got the fire going. He's drawing in the dirt like the oral historian that he is. But I went there to ask him this question. What happened to the Anasazi, the pre-Pueblo Indians that built all the fantastic cliff dwellings in the Four Corner area who literally seem to disappear overnight. So he starts telling, the sanitized story. Well, they probably migrated, blah, blah, blah. And I raised some objections to that, and he looks right into the camera. We filmed him for 3 hours. He looks right in the camera, and he says, well, I shouldn't tell you this, but if you would have asked my great-grandfather, here's the story that he would have told. And he starts telling about a portal opening in very early America, and a fallen reptilian being. They actually draw pictures of this thing. It looks like a half-man, half-reptile. He comes through the portal. He starts teaching the Anasazi how to go into their kivas and to practice sorcery, pharmakia, how to open gateways and doorways to the underworld, while all of a sudden the doorways start opening and giants emerge onto the surface of the earth. They draw that too in their petroglyphs that date back to 1,000 years before Jesus walked on the earth, of a doorway, the reptile, giant six-toed and six-fingered beings coming through.
The Bible talks about people with 6 fingers.
That's right.
Toes. The Bible talks about giants. So they got that revelation about the same time that Moses got that?
Actually, what they were doing was writing down a record that was showing that this was a true worldwide event. So you had people on this side of the world that had no method for communicating with Moses, and at the same time, they're painting on their petroglyphs about these giants. And by the way, their story goes on because the giants started cannibalizing the Anasazi. They all start crying out to the great God of heaven who sends a flood that goes around the world and wipes out. So yeah, it is an absolute corroboration from early American history written in stone around the same time that Moses is in the Middle East saying, and there were giants in the earth in those days and also after that.
The imagery that Genesis 28 presents in Jacob's ladder dream absolutely describes a portal connecting the divine realm to humanity. Jacob even explicitly describes this intersection of dimension as the gate of heaven, meaning that it serves as a passageway for divine interaction. And this reminds me of ancient Mesopotamian ziggurats found in Sumer and Babylonia, which were massive, tiered pyramid temples designed to act as sacred conduits between heaven and earth. Although it's not explicitly mentioned by name, it's theorized that the Tower of Babel was a ziggurat, and the language surrounding the Tower of Babel in Genesis 11 lends itself to this idea of an ancient structure meant to connect mankind to otherworldly realms. But if what this Navajo medicine man said was true, the implications are absolutely staggering. This would mean that when the fallen angels descended, it was a worldwide event, not just localized to the Middle East, if what we know about geography was the same then as it is now. But to me, the most interesting aspect of his story is that this portal was opened right here in the U.S., and it just so happens that there's an extremely symbolic structure that's being proposed and will likely soon be built in Washington, D.C. This is an image of an arch that President Donald Trump has recently proposed to be built in D.C. Just at first glance, it resembles what I would think a portal would look like, or an entrance from one place to another. But as we get a closer look, the statue at the top of the arch also looks familiar. Obviously, in America, we think of the Statue of Liberty when we see this, but let's examine the resemblance that Lady Liberty shares with the Greek sun god Apollo, or Helios Christos. We see the sun god symbolism shared between the two, with the rays beaming out from their heads. This is a shared attribute between Apollo and Helios, whose identities were somewhat merged throughout the Hellenistic period when Apollo increasingly adopted Helios' solar role. And the reason I bring up Helios Christos is that his name literally translates to Christ the True Sun, S-U-N. The name Apollo is more covertly Antichrist than Helios Christos. And there's a direct linkage between Apollo and Lucifer, which is the Latin term for the light bringer. They're also both depicted holding a torch in hand, symbolically bringing enlightenment or illumination to the world. In fact, Lady Liberty was originally named Liberty Enlightening the World. But now what we see on the proposed arch is that Apollo has wings, signifying his return to angelic or deity status. And underneath the statue we see the phrase, "One nation under God." But this, of course, begs the question, which God? Is it the one true God, the Most High Yahweh? Or is it literally the God who's standing just above the phrase, under God, who's also holding its hands in the as above, so below formation like Baphomet? And while we're on this topic, let's take a look at this blasphemous AI-generated image that recently garnered mainstream attention when Donald Trump posted it to his social media. Of course, at first glance, we notice that it depicts the president as Jesus Christ, which is blatantly evil. But as we examine the image more closely, there's a familiar silhouette at the top of the image. Doesn't this look familiar? But what blew me away about this is that the majority of mainstream media outlets, even those who openly oppose the president, seem to crop the image to cover the silhouette of Apollo in the background. It's possible that when someone on the world stage, like the president, covertly shows their spiritual allegiance like this, it's actually a signal to other actors on the same stage throughout the world to announce an achievement of a particular goal within the fallen angel agenda. And this all comes on the heels of what has repeatedly been called the Golden Age all throughout President Donald Trump's second term. In fact, on day one of his second term as President of the United States, just hours after his inauguration, he held this announcement of a new joint project with none other than Sam Altman, Larry Ellison, Masayoshi Son, and the United States government for the furthering of artificial intelligence, a project aptly named Stargate. While the media and talking heads turned the world's attention to the election, something much more sinister was taking place in the shadows. Let's watch this disturbing clip of the announcement where he quite literally tells us that he's going to do things that, quote, people will be shocked at, and references this golden age several times.
As president, we're back, and we had a great first term, but we're going to have an even better second term, and I think we're going to do things that people will be shocked at. But to announce the largest AI infrastructure project by far in history, and it's all taking place right here in America. As you know, there's great competition for AI and other things, and they're coming in at the highest level. We're joined by Oracle Executive Chairman Larry Ellison, SoftBank CEO, my friend Masayoshi Son, and CEO of OpenAI, and I would say by far the leading expert based on everything I read, Sam Altman. So that's great that you're coming in together. That's a massive group of talent and money. Together, these world-leading technology giants are announcing the formation of Stargate. So put that name down in your books, because I think you're going to hear a lot about it.
Because this is as you said yesterday, this is the beginning of golden age. Of America. This is one great example, I think. Right? We wouldn't have decided to do this.
I think so.
This is the beginning of golden age. We wouldn't have decided unless you won. And yesterday we agreed, we signed to make this happen. This is the beginning of our golden age. Thank you very much. Thank you.
This golden age talk is in reference to the Luciferian era of enlightenment, which they define as the moment humanity moves beyond traditional religious dogma to embrace individuality, knowledge, and materialism. It's characterized by the triumph of science, technology, and rational thought. The Luciferians also call their golden age the apotheosis of man, apotheosis meaning deification or elevating to divine status. And this isn't some new concept that's just being introduced into our society. The Luciferian belief that man could ascend above the heights of heaven was alive and well, even in the 19th century when Constantini Bermidi painted the Apotheosis of Washington mural in the eye of the U.S. Capitol building's dome, which portrays George Washington rising to the heavens in glory. And again, if we take a step back and look at the big picture of all this, including the symbolic portal arch, the Native American oral history of portals in the U.S., the Luciferian painting of George Washington ascending to the heights of heaven, and the Lucifer Apollo sun god worship, it all ties in together with what the prophetic writings of the Bible tells us about the end times. Here's Dr. Horn explaining how the Apollo figure appears in Revelation and resembles the rise of fallen angel technology like artificial intelligence.
The messenger, because in antiquity, both in the Bible and outside of the Bible, ancients perceived comets, asteroids, as the messengers of the gods. In fact, here's a little interesting factoid, right? Nepheses, if I'm saying that right, was an ancient Greek term for Apollo, but when Apollo is viewed as an asteroid moving through the air and he becomes an omen, a dark omen, an omen of doom, right? Well, in the very next chapter, Revelation 9, it says another asteroid, star, falls from the heavens, and to him is given the keys to the bottomless pit. Well, when he opens up the bottomless pit, guess who's down there? Apollo, Abaddon, Apollyon, the very entity that the ancient Greeks saw as an asteroid of the end times that would bring chaos and darkness and doom upon the earth, is connected in the very same verses in Scripture, the very next chapter. By the way, because you've had experts on your program lately talking about artificial intelligence and the dangers and threat.
Yeah.
Guess what? From memory now, but I think it's around page 35 of that report. Guess what they also list as a trigger that could set this whole thing in motion? The emergence of a new form of humanity. Now, again, these are not geeks sitting in a Microsoft office somewhere, meandering around about their next space novel. This was the highest intelligence agencies in the United States and Europe working together, and they imagined that through biotechnology and combining that with artificial intelligence systems, a new form of humanity could emerge. Well, guess what? The prophecy of the Cumae Sibyl on the dollar bill, Anno et coeptus, Novus Ordo Seclorum, these are derived from her ancient prophecy. But what was it she said? Not only would a global new age come, a new world order, over which Apollo, who's identified in Revelation 17:8 and other places as the spirit that's going to inhabit the Antichrist, not only would he arrive, but it says he will come down as a new form of humanity. 'Tis thine own Apollo reigns when the golden age rolls over again and gods and men are unified once again. It sounds very much like the mighty men of old, which were born out of the sin of the watchers.
Does. We have come full circle, is what you're saying.
It's the same story, the same rebellion against Yahweh that started in the garden and continuously permeated history leading up to today. But the good news is that we know how the story ends, and we know we're on the winning side. Jesus is the answer, the one who descended into the underworld and arose victorious, holding the keys to death and Hades, and he's offered us the opportunity to follow him and ascend to the heights of heaven, but the way that our God intended for us to do so. Jesus tells us exactly this in John chapter 10. Most assuredly, I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs up some other way, the same is a thief and a robber. He then goes on to say, I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved, and will go in and out and find pasture. He's the way, the truth, and the life. And any other way that's presented to us here on earth is a path that'll undoubtedly lead to destruction. But at any rate, I pray that this video has been a blessing to you. And if you've made it this far, please like this video, subscribe to Dance Like David, and leave a comment that says Jesus is the way, as any interaction with this video allows our content to reach and help more people. And may God shine his face upon you and give you peace.